ride with me to the other clans and we will defeat the sky people.
You can't start the car. Johnny has the keys.
Hello out there in podcast land. You have reached Johnny Has the Keys, where we talk about horror movies and science fiction films and those key elements that lift them above the average genre fare. Are you joining us for the first time? If you are, we would like to welcome you to our exquisite and weird brand of nerdy knowledge and geeky wisdom. It makes sense if you've been around us for a while. You'll know what I'm talking about. If you're joining us, if you're rejoining us, again, we would like to welcome you back because obviously you do get it. My name is Tim. I am here with my co-host and good friend, David Horton. David, how are you doing this week?
I am well this week. I am excited. I'm playing with my new microphone, which I've been, not new, but I'm playing with my different microphone.
That's not today. A metaphor, is it?
No, not doing the podcast. And I've been doing a little bit of everything, but I've not done a lot of genre stuff. The only real thing I've done, and we even discussed this briefly off mic, was I've finally started The Boys season 3. So just doing that one and watching through that. And you've already seen it.
I'm not done with it, but I am up to the very final episode. I've got to finish that probably tomorrow night.
Yeah, and when we finish it, we need to do a special episode just on it.
Yeah,
I've liked the first 2 seasons. It's very unique. I love the characters. I love the fact that they can make fun of these classic superheroes in such a weird way. Like, in this one, in season 3, they introduced Termite, who is, I guess, Ant-Man, or the equivalent of Ant-Man, because he can get small and get normal and get small and get normal. I don't know if he can get big or not yet. I haven't been there. But Homelander is obviously Superman, only the psychotic Superman.
Well, and he's a little bit of Cyclops from the X-Men too.
True. Yeah, the way they blend it is great. The acting performances are just so good in every character they have. I mean, even the mousy little CEO assistant that's been there since season 1, and she's always
her character gets big this season.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, and she played a baddie. She was a villain on a season of Fear the Walking Dead.
Really? Okay,
yeah.
The actress? Okay.
Yes. I can't think of her name. She's got reddish hair. Yeah, she's like like you said, the little executive assistant.
Yes. Yeah. And was always, the underling and everything else. But she'll do supportive, then not. Supportive, then not. So it's
oh yeah, she's all over the board as far as emotions and stuff.
Yeah.
Back to what you were saying, I love how they parody a lot of well-known superheroes out there. Like they obviously the Deep is a parody of Aquaman.
Yeah.
And there's a new one this season that you'll see eventually named Soldier Boy, and he's clearly Captain America. Okay. Yeah, exactly. So there's several direct references there, or indirectly, if I may say. That's a little bit of a paradox, but.
And I haven't done a lot of research on them. I mean, I'm assuming this was a graphic novel or a comic book or whatever
it was
originally came from. And are they sticking to it? Are they not? When we do our own in-depth deep dive into it, I'll research it. But it's just very interesting to see how they're adapting it or how they're progressing the stories. I mean, it gets a little repetitive, I think, in places. But
yeah, I don't know where they can go for season 4, and I want a season 4, but I don't know what they're going to do. But I mean, they've got to get away from just, having one enemy and that kind of thing.
Yeah, and or having the whole conspiracy against that sort of attitude, even though the guy, and I, again, haven't done my research, but the actor who plays Homelander, he deserves an Emmy for his performance. He is so sociopathic.
He's a psycho. Yeah.
And just
it would
the
be
way he'll do those little eye looks and everything, and you feel the same way most of the characters in the room feel, which is, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. Is he gonna pop or not?
Yeah.
I can't.
And he's gonna laser me.
Yeah, and then suddenly he'll smile and go, "Well, thanks so much," and walk off, and you're going, "Oh my god, oh my god,"
Yeah.
It's really.
I think I
well
just
done.
came up with the plot for season 4. Is
Okay.
they should do Avengers. They should do an Earth
versus
threat.
Homelander.
No, a threat to Earth where they all have to unite, even though they don't like each other.
Oh, that would work. Yeah, that would
yeah,
be
they
a
could
good
do
one.
that.
That's a good
Interesting.
idea. Yeah.
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that because I mean it does fall in the sci-fi genre a bit.
Yes.
Mine this week is not really horror or sci-fi. However, it is horrific if you've ever seen it, and it is wonderful. And I finally finished Ozark, which ran for I think 4 seasons on Netflix. And this I don't, if you haven't seen this show, I don't even know where to start. It is basically, it's got a lot of elements of Breaking Bad, but to me, it reminds me a little bit more of The Sopranos because of all the family aspects in it.
Okay.
But it is about a white collar family in Chicago that get wrapped up in a Mexican drug cartel, and they end up relocating to what I guess you would call the Ozarks. It's, I think, near St. Louis. It's on a big lake, but it was
Missouri.
filmed. Yeah, it was filmed where I live on Lake Lanier, and so we used to see lots of times when I'm watching this show, I'll go, "Oh my God, that's Shadburn Ferry Road," or whatever, because I recognize it.
So it's shot in Atlanta?
Yeah,
Or
it's
in
shot
and around Atlanta?
in and around Atlanta, but mostly up here on Lake Lanier. It was shot.
Okay.
Like the house they live in is actually a house up here on Lake Lanier.
Okay.
An ugly old A-frame that's like all glass. Those old lake houses from the
It's
80s,
interesting you
70s,
said
and 80s.
Breaking Bad. I had 2 different people this week say, if you have not seen Breaking Bad, you have to see it. And I've not seen one episode of that series. And there are
It's
people
good.
saying it is one of the greatest series on television ever. And I'm like, really?
It's pretty good.
So yeah, I'll have to. From what I've read, I'm intrigued because they take a protagonist and by the end of the series turn him into the antagonist. He essentially becomes the villain, but you still care for the villain. So that's interesting. So
Yeah.
I'm curious about that. But this one I've heard great things about Ozark. So,
Well, I mean, there are some things that are a little far-fetched. It's like, oh my God, there's no way they wouldn't be dead already. But and people get killed left and right. They don't care who they kill off. But Jason Bateman continues to surprise me. I never really was that appreciative of him as an actor, and he is really, really good on this. And we already know he's a great director, and he does tend to direct at least 2 episodes a season of this show as well. Laura Linney's one of my favorite actresses.
always.
You can't go wrong with her. She is amazing. But the breakout star is Jennifer Garner, the girl you see there in the middle, who has already won 2 Emmys and is destined to win a 3rd for this show. Yes. Okay. And to be able to stand her ground as a young upcomer against Laura Linney is saying, that speaks volumes. And now you're seeing her everywhere. I keep comparing her to like the American version of Anya Taylor-Joy. She's just that good. Okay. So I would, and she's beautiful. She was like a model at one point, but they make her look so white trash ugly on this show. I mean, she's got the bleached, frizzy hair. She's just white trash. She just plays it. And the F-bomb is every other word out of her mouth. So
really?
She cusses like a sailor. But highly, highly recommend if you're a big horror fan. It is very horrific. I mean, there is a lot of murder and violence and gore in this show. And it is about an all-American white family wrapped up in a Mexican drug cartel.
Aren't they all? I mean, come on.
So that's what's been getting me this week. I almost said our old tagline to our other show.
Interesting. I'll have to give it a look then. It'll have to go on my list.
Yeah, I'm telling you, it's very addictive once you start. So, and so is Breaking Bad for that matter. But so none of our stuff dealt with horror or space, and yet here we are. We're gonna go into the midst of space because and I'm curious. Well, I'll get there in a second. For those of you who are joining us and don't know what we're talking about, again, I say the same thing I always do, which is, why are you watching us if you don't know what we're going to talk about? But we are going to go into the past, looking at the future, for a sequel to one of the greatest science fiction movies ever made. The movie is called 2010, and the remaster and re-edit of it and resend of it says "The Year We Make Contact" as a tagline added to it, even though, first bit of trivia, that is not in the movie anywhere. The Year We Make Contact is not in the title sequence. It's not in the end. It's nowhere. It's just on the marketing going forward. I've got somewhere that it was also at one time called The Odyssey Continues. Did you have that?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Odyssey Continues was basically Arthur C. Clarke's suggestion for what should do. But as I said, this is a sequel to 2001. A brief recap. I'll try to keep it short and concise, but basically it does take place around the year 2010 when Earth finds out that there is another monolith orbiting Jupiter. A monolith orbiting Jupiter, and Discovery is there. They have been making plans to go back since they've lost communication with Dave Bowman and Poole and the other astronauts, and they want to investigate. Unfortunately, this is at a time of the Cold War, so the United States and the USSR, as it is still referred to, are kind of in the Cold War. They're one-upping each other, especially in South America. But they have the Leonov, which is a brand new spacecraft that they've got ready, and it'll be ready a year earlier than the American ship. So they work out a deal where they will take 3 astronauts, U.S. astronauts, aboard the Leonov, a Soviet ship, and they will go to investigate Jupiter and find out about the discovery and find out about the monolith and what happened to the astronauts, and hopefully explain the ending of 2001 to us. They take along Roy Scheider's character, who is supposed to be the same character, Dr. Heywood Floyd, who was in 2001, although a lot of people don't even know that or understand that or care about that, really, because they look nothing alike and they really act and speak nothing alike. But they take Roy Scheider's character, Dr. Heywood Floyd. They take Dr. Walter Curnow, who is an expert on as an engineer, so he's good with the Discovery systems and all of the engineering that goes into it, and Dr. R. Chandra, who an Indian doctor played by Bob Balaban.
Bob Balaban, yeah. I was like, that I got to look Indian to me.
Yeah. And when they get to Jupiter, which takes some time, takes years, a few months to get there, or several months to get there, they discover something wonderful that happens, and won't tell you anymore because we'll probably talk about it as we get there. Had you seen this movie before?
I believe I saw this movie with you in a theater.
I think we did. I'm pretty sure we did.
And I had never seen 2001, or if I had, maybe it had been on video and I didn't remember it.
No, I think I remember you saying you hadn't seen the original.
Yeah.
I think, really. So watching it again, what'd you think?
I remembered liking it when I saw it with you, and I still like it. It's a bit dated as far as effects, especially. I was shocked at how bad some of the effects were in it compared to, coming from being a sequel to a movie that's known for its special effects and stuff. I just thought there was some bad. I think I read that it was maybe the original version of CGI. Like,
oh yeah, some of the planet sequences, the Jupiter in the background, everything else. Some of this is the first time CGI was used on film.
But it doesn't. It definitely moves more like a modern plot-driven movie.
Mhm.
It's less of an art piece, whereas the whole Kubrick thing was more of an art piece, if that makes
Totally true.
sense.
Totally true. It was directed by Peter Hyams, who had a huge success with Outland, which ironically is set on the moon Io, which is in orbit of Jupiter. And this one has a lot to do with Europa, which is in orbit of Jupiter.
Mhm.
But he also did Capricorn 1, Star Chamber. I mean, he was a pretty good early 80s director. And I think he does a good job in this. He is also credited as writing this along with Arthur C. Clarke. This was based on a book that Clarke wrote. The book came out just a year before the movie came out. So they were working on, Clarke was working on the book while they were working on the screenplay. So similar to the way they had done 2001 with Kubrick. Trivia wise, Hyams was very concerned, naturally, about doing a sequel to 2001, one of the most popular science fiction movies in history. And so iconic, like you said, in the way it's mostly an art film, and it's a very cerebral, cold look at science fiction, as opposed to any kind of warmth or character or anything.
With the name Kubrick attached.
Correct.
That's intimidating enough.
Yes, and but I do have that. So the studio wanted it. They originally, of course, went to Kubrick, and Kubrick said, "No, I'm not interested in the least in doing a sequel. No, working on other stuff now." But Hyams, when he was hired, said he wouldn't do it without the blessing of Kubrick. So he actually called Stanley Kubrick, and they spoke for over 3.5 hours on the phone. But in the trivia I researched, Hyams said that most of it, however, was talking about how he did the effects for Outland. And then like near the end of the call, he said, well, really the reason I called was, can I do do you have a problem if I direct the sequel to 2001? He goes, no, man, go for it. It's fine with me.
Do you think this was similar to the call that Flanagan had with Stephen King over The Shining?
Could have been. I think so. Except I think King was probably more excited about Flanagan's possibilities. Probably. Yeah.
Where Kubrick was like, yeah, whatever.
And I agree with you. I do think there are certain shots that seem dated. And then, of course, this whole premise. But then again, anytime you're dealing with anything like 1984, 2001, 2010, it's dated because that's in the past to us presently. But they are filming it 30 years ago or 50 years ago or 60 years ago and projecting it into the future.
But I think this movie looks cheaper than 2001. When I watched 2001, it looks really good. There are elements of 2010 that don't hold up. I don't know if it's the film stock or the effects or what.
Well, part of it is film stock. Part of it is the challenge of the set themselves, because Kubrick, in standard fashion, destroyed all the models, all the sets, everything. So they had to actually use, and blueprints as well. So they actually had to use still images from 2001 to rebuild these sets. And he also made the choice of overlighting all of the sets. 2001 is bright, but it's bright in a very cold, you can see every detail of the set kind of cinematography, whereas Hyams doesn't. Everything is kind of, like you said, kind of muted, looks cheaper, looks like a lower
and there
budget.
were some things where I could see the outline around somebody where they were green screened.
Yeah, the matte lines. Back then. Yeah, because everything back then was super, literally what they used to call superimposing. It wasn't even green screen, really. They hadn't perfected a lot of that technology. There are a lot of technological advances for this movie. I mean, they did some great stuff. The weightless scenes look fairly good for wire work. His use, the way he actually does certain shots to show the height they are from Jupiter when they're going across in the EVs. And all that. The aerobraking scene, which had never been even really talked about, other than us NASA geeks who really loved space flight and everything. We knew what aerobraking was, but to actually...
Is that the slingshot around the planet?
Well, they don't slingshot. They use the actual gravity and the atmosphere to slow it down. It down, not speed it up.
Okay.
So yeah, it's the opposite of the Star Trek slingshot effect.
Right.
Sort of thing. But you had computers. He has a laptop computer on the beach, This was in 1984. There were no
Mhm.
laptop computers anywhere. And if they were, it was the size of a car.
Mhm. Well, and apparently it was real. That was like an Apple prototype or something.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was an Apple prototype. They had an electric car. They have electric cars. You see those in a couple of shots.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, I thought the design on Earth was kind of cool for looking futuristic.
yeah, I did. I like the fact that he did I have a pool in my living room with
dolphins.
in it. Yeah, kind of thing. I thought that was interesting. And also my headboard is a fish aquarium.
Mhm.
But of course, obviously my wife wanted that design because she deals with the fishes, sort of thing. But, the dual gantry idea, the kind of being able to synchronize with the ship and then go across with cabling kind of stuff. That's a really sci-fi 50s and 60s idea
Mhm.
that they incorporated in this, which I liked. Of course, they brought Hal back, and that voice alone is enough to just kind of make you shudder kind of thing, which I thought they did really well. The birth sequence of Hal, I really have as one of my favorite scenes. When you hear him go, "Good morning, Dr. Chandra," and you're just going, "Oh my God, he's back!"
Mhm.
you know, for us sci-fi guys, if it's like Freddy coming back, come on now.
Oh yeah.
You know.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was the villain back for a sequel for sure.
Yeah. You'd mentioned the computer and the fact that the one that Heywood has on the beach is actually a prototype. Uh, One of the things too about this movie is this was the first email collaboration link in movie history. They're known for that. Since Clark was writing the book at the same time they were writing the story, email was not really a thing yet. It was only used by universities and some of the military.
Mhm.
But the studio set up a link between Arthur C. Clarke in Sri Lanka and Peter Hyams in Los Angeles so that they could daily send rewrites back and forth to each other or ask questions or answers or whatever. Because Arthur C. Clarke, loves Sri Lanka. He's lived there most of his life. He retired there early on. And they're credited
Imagine
as
it's
that.
pretty cheap to live there too.
Oh, they're credited as that was one of the first time in movie histories where it was used as a tool, where email
Right.
was used as a tool. And
Yeah,
now
I read that as well.
We use it on our phones. So
Yeah, I mean, we have communicators like Star Trek now.
Oh yeah.
For sure.
Tricorders too. Because as soon as Apple came out with all that telemetry tracking, where like health and all that, it gives you your blood pressure, it gives you your stuff. I was going, it's a tricorder too. Now it's a med scanner. Gene Roddenberry was so smart.
He was. I actually write about that in a zombie book. That's funny. What do I have? Oh, Peter Hyams. I was curious about him. I was like, he really hasn't done anything that was that great, like spectacular.
Right.
His list of movie includes some really lower class sci-fi, including Capricorn 1, you said, Outland, Time Cop. He did that movie, The Relic, the horror movie in the museum. We talked about it on something else recently. It was by Lincoln and Preston and Child. Are the writers, and Tom Sizemore's in it. But then he also did Narrow Margin. But I wanted to do a little research on him because I was like, why is he getting these gigs? And he's like a Renaissance man. He was a music and art major. He started as a CBS news person at age 21 locally. I think, I want to say Chicago. I can't remember where he was. But he was also a jazz musician in like jazz ensembles, and he has art pieces in prestigious galleries. So this guy is an artist.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I read that somewhere, I don't have this in my notes, that he was very choosy about the projects he took. And I think maybe collaborating with R.C. Clarke had something to do with the reason why he wanted to do this. I don't know. He was offered some other movies that we know of that are in the horror genre that he turned down. And I found this interesting. One of them was Hellboy before Guillermo del Toro did it. But he was also offered the remake of Night of the Living Dead before Tom Savini did it. Did you know that?
No, I did not. That's a good
Yeah.
link. That's
And
interesting.
I kind of like that remake. You're not a big fan of it from
Okay.
our Night of the Living Dead episode way back when, season
Yep.
1. But I'm curious to see what his take would have been with it had he done it. But he turned it down to do that movie Narrow Margin. They were both filmed, I guess, at the same time.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
anyway, that's what I had on him. I found him fascinating. I was like, I know the name, but I really don't know a lot about what he's done because he's not a mega director.
Well, it's interesting. I've always equated him. He falls into my category of like what I call working directors, which are they're not recognized for being this extreme blockbuster sort of thing, but they do good work.
Like John
Competent
Badham.
work. John Badham, Hal Needham, even McTiernan. Even though
McTiernan, yeah.
I love McTiernan's movies, and I think they do deserve a lot more credit than they. And they do have, Hunt for Red October, Predator. They've got good reps to them, but these guys are not the star directors, that came out, not even to the point of like a Guillermo or something like that. But they're just good, competent working directors who do work well with a variety of things, whether it's actors or story or special effects or cinematography, whatever. What about do you want to talk about scenes? Any scenes that jump out at you from this one?
Well, probably the scene I like the best that immediately comes to mind is the spacewalk with Lithgow and the Russian guy going over to the original. What's the name of the original ship?
Discovery.
The Discovery.
Yeah,
I love that. He's
Ilya
hyperventilating.
Baskin is the actor who I always liked too. He was in Moscow on the Hudson, Name of the Rose. So I always liked that actor.
Yeah, so I like that. Them trying to calm him down from hyperventilating and vomiting in his space.
It was so good.
Yeah,
So good.
and Lithgow's so good at that type of role. Anyway, he's good at anything he does, really.
And I think that's a perfect example of trying to take an homage to, what a sequel should do. Take, homages to the original, but also, build the story further, which we've talked about when we've covered other sequels. But, he's using the artifice the same as Bowman when Bowman does his spacewalk, and all you hear is his breathing. He'll bang into something and you don't hear that, but you hear the the whole time of him breathing, and the fact his breathing just keeps getting faster and faster.
And louder. Yeah, I was like, it's very it's nerve-wracking. Yeah, it makes you stress. It stresses you out.
It is one of my favorite scenes too. I've got it in there. It's one of the best best scenes in the movie.
And then the only other scene that pops into my head immediately is there's several. There's the one where Scheider turns around and the guy from the original movie standing behind him, Dave Bowman. Yeah. That one. But the one that keeps popping in my head is the stupid one you mentioned where they're in his house and the dolphins are there. Like, why does he have dolphins? And then I read that Roy Scheider actually had a dolphin and went on to be on the show Sequest. And I'm like, okay, whatever. That's just so strange.
Yeah, but unique, and it worked. There's a scene not a lot of people notice because it's a cameo, really, and by cameo meaning it doesn't even get its own close-up or medium shot. But the second scene or so in the movie when Heywood is actually sitting with the other guy who's taken his job essentially as director of aerospace technology or whatever, and they're sitting in front of the White House, and they're talking about, basically they're giving the plot of, here's my option. This crazy Russian came to me it's
the African-American actor.
Yes, yeah. He's really good. But in the background on a bench is Arthur C. Clarke. He actually came for that day to shoot that scene, and he's actually there, visible. But
I read it, but I never looked for him.
Yeah, but he doesn't even get a close-up or anything. It's like crazy.
Well, that's kind of the way you should do it. I think it's kind of cool, actually.
Yeah. I did like that scene. I like their character to be. It's a memorable performance by him to be there and to to not have a major role in the movie. but he's there. He does all the communication with them later on. He's the one that was reading all the reports about, I wish I had better news, but we're bombing the hell out of South Africa now, or whatever, or South America.
The first scene, the opening scene, is really good too.
Yes, very good.
With Dana Elcar is his name.
Yes, it's a great hook, and it's also shot in such a way it's very interesting. Except for like the 3 long shots, they look like they're not even in the same. You could have shot them months apart because
you could have, because he's like
even
looking up like metal stairs,
yeah,
like a fire escape almost.
Well, it's the access tower to the telescope,
to the satellites.
But the no, satellites are in orbit. Those are the telescopes. That's
they're satellite dishes.
Well, yeah, okay, I'll give you that one.
I mean, that's what Jodie Foster did in Contact, David. I know these things,
which is a key for this because she shot in the same location for Contact. But it's very interesting because they don't even do any over-the-shoulder shots, anything. Everything is just a single shot and then a couple of long shots, which I thought was a cool choice.
Mm-hmm.
I liked 2 scenes. I liked Hal's rebirth scene because I really liked the fact that they recreated the scene and you could see Chandra actually, floating through the memory bank area where he's putting in the little discs,
the little glass Star Trek looking things. Yeah.
The memory nodes or whatever we want to call them. And slowly bringing Hal back to life.
Like, don't push that one in. That's what I want to say.
That's the one that drives him crazy. And then the other one I like, which is a guilty pleasure of mine, I've always loved the scene where Heywood goes to the Russian commander to try to convince her that they need to leave in 2 days and they have to use the ship. And to illustrate it, he holds the pen up and then holds the pencil up and they just float there kind of thing. And then he goes and it floats away and everything else. 2 things. One, I always, as a kid, used to love that and go, wow, how did they film that? That looks so freaking good. And I finally could figure out by watching it on VHS over and over that there's a glass there that he's actually attaching it to. But then it makes no sense because he flicks it and it goes away, and you can't do that with glass. They had to do that with wires or whatever. But anyway, again, before computers and a lot of superimposing and all of that stuff. But now looking at it, it really bothered me because I was going, okay, he walked into the room. So there's obviously gravity being created by the centrifugal force. So there's obviously gravity on this spaceship. So if he held it up, it wouldn't stay there.
I thought that too. I'm glad I'm not the only one. Okay. That's funny.
No, I was going, oh, dang. It's one of those childhood disappointments. I remember it a lot better.
Yeah, for sure.
And then I like the whole ending. I like we need to get away from here really quickly, and the way that suspense builds, and and whether or not Hal is actually going to initiate the launch or not, because maybe we should stay and watch, Dr. Chandra. No, Hal, just keep going with the countdown, and Heywood has the cutoff device that he's installed secretly to destroy Hal and everything else. And then the whole something wonderful and the whole thing. And then I love the coda of this. I like the music and I love everything in Heywood's last thing about, I'm going to sleep now, but I'll see you in a few months. And all I can tell you that happened, I always remember the line about all I could tell you that happened was the president of the United States and looked out the window of the White House, and the premier of Russia looked out the window of the Kremlin, and they saw 2 suns in the sky.
Mm-hmm.
And I went, yeah, that is so Arthur C. Clarke. That is so science fiction. That is so earth-changing, literally. So,
and maybe gives you a little bit of hope for the reconciliation of the 2 powerhouses of the States and Russia. Yeah.
And this coming out in 1984 when, there was still a Cold War going on.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, we were right in the midst of Reagan when this movie came out.
Oh, yeah.
I do have a question before I forget. And that is, after watching Interstellar, would it not take that long to get to Jupiter to where his family would already be old when he got back?
No, we can go to Jupiter in 2 years now if we wanted to.
Even then?
And 2 years back. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So they wouldn't be that much different. Because I mean, I know he's having to like go into
Cryogenic sleep.
Exactly, go to sleep. So I was wondering how long it actually took and what his family's age would be. Well, I already questioned his wife's age because I was like, that chick's half Roy Scheider's age. What's he doing with this really young woman and this little kid? But she would be much older, I thought, by the time he got back, and the kid as well.
He would be, I mean, it's kind of similar to Interstellar in the fact that he would have to tell his child, I'll see you in 4 years.
Okay.
Or 5 years or whatever,
Well, that answers my question then. I get confused on some of the scientific stuff in these films. I did have some stuff a little bit more on the background. I don't think it did that great when it came out, but it was released at the same time with two other big sci-fi movies, and they were Dune, which we have covered, unfortunately, and Starman, which is John Carpenter, which is a movie I remember you not liking, that I do kind of like, and that Jeff Bridges was nominated for an Oscar for. So out of all three of these, I think this one was actually nominated for some special effects Oscars, but not acting. Whereas, so it had some competition in 1984. The biggest competition, though, was from Beverly Hills Cop, which just basically knocked everything off the chart.
Of course. And it also had, the fandom backlash. There are 2001 purists who do not like this movie. Wynn was one of those. He didn't like in his opinion, it spoon-fed you the plot. It wasn't artsy enough. It wasn't, to your point, it didn't have the same quality of effects of the first one that blew people away. But then again, every movie can't be breathtaking. I mean, I think there was 2001. And then I think the next evolution of sci-fi film and effects was Star Wars. And then it took a couple of decades before we got to
Jurassic Park,
which, So I'm not. So every film can't live up to it. This one did have huge shoes to fill, as they say, because 2000 is an iconic cinematic movie. This couldn't be that. What I do like about this is the characters and the humor and the structure of it. No, it does. I do agree with fans that it does kind of depreciate the mystery of 2001. But it creates its own mystery as well, with the tagline and everything at the end. And it's been kind of prescient because we found in recent years with recent probes and everything else to Jupiter and beyond that, yes, Europa is covered in ice and is possibly capable of sustaining life.
Yeah, I've always heard that about Titan.
Yeah. Io's volcanic. Titan has I think Titan is the one that actually has
an ocean.
Ice volcanoes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And it's Saturn, whereas Io is Jupiter. Yeah. At one point, I almost majored in astronomy. I know our solar system. I just don't know other ones.
But I remember, for years after this movie, even you and I sometimes going, easy as cake, piece of pie. I would do that all the time because I thought it was just clever dialogue. I liked it.
Well, and you mentioned the cast, and I mean, the fact that they have Roy Scheider and John Lithgow elevates it because that's two very likable actors in those roles. Interestingly enough, I have another little bit of trivia that there were originally plans for 2 more sequels, or maybe it was 2 sequels to the original. No, I think, and it says one would have been Odyssey 3, and then 3001. And Tom Hanks was apparently involved in these, who would have been another actor very similar to Roy Scheider or John Lithgow, that is very likable and would have probably been good in that. The Sci-Fi Channel announced an adaptation in 2016, but no concrete plans have surfaced since. And, you know,
probably not.
And who knows with Sci-Fi Channel, it could be really bad. So.
Well, you know, mentioning cast and everything else, this was also the debut of Helen Mirren, and she is phenomenal in this part.
She's very good, and she's so young. I was like barely recognizing her. Yeah.
I may be wrong. This was either her debut or Excalibur, one or the other.
It was her American debut.
Oh, American debut.
It's what she got her Screen Actors Guild. I was going to talk about that when we got to casting, which is, I guess, a good enough segue.
Good enough segue to casting.
I could actually go ahead and lead with her that this was her American debut. I did not realize that she is of Russian descent. So she has Russian in her lineage, and but apparently her accent was a little bit bad, and some people kind of pointed that out to her. But yeah, she played the commander of the Russian
of the Leonov.
But that's really all I have on her. The fact that, you know, it is Helen Mirren and she is wonderful.
Yes.
I have with Roy Scheider, since William Sylvester had visibly aged, this is what you were talking about, the guy that played Heywood in the original movie.
Correct.
They felt they needed a strong leading man for the presence of that character to continue on, and that's why he was replaced by Scheider.
Yeah.
The difference in appearance, personality were so significant that a lot of audiences failed to recognize that they were the same character. Yep. and you had already said earlier, they look absolutely nothing alike.
No, and easily they could. There's no reference that he makes back to. In other words, and maybe they did this on purpose or not, but he doesn't say, you know, when I was in that crater and touched the monolith. Or when we first found it on the moon, you know, that sort of thing. There's no reference back, so it works. People just accept that he's a guy who needs to lead this mission.
Yeah,
there you go.
It works.
Yeah.
Well, and Scheider's got the charisma to carry it off.
Yes.
Speaking of which, I didn't realize this. You know, John Lithgow is also in this movie. We've talked about him, but I didn't realize that it's been a long time since I've seen the movie All That Jazz, the Bob Fosse movie with Roy Scheider, and apparently Lithgow is in it too.
Yeah, he's his rival. He wears the same boots and pants and everything, trying to be just like Fosse.
Okay,
in it, yeah,
had no idea. But and I had always assumed that Garp was the first movie that John Lithgow did, but I guess it's just the first movie he was known for, right? Because he's not as recognized. And All That Jazz was 1979. Garp was 82, and this movie was 84. And in Garp, I think Lithgow was nominated for an Oscar.
Oh, yeah.
He played Roberta. Wasn't her name Roberta, the transsexual? Yep. Yeah.
Transsexual.
Yeah. I guess she'd be a trans woman now. Anyway, that's all I have on Lithgow. You mentioned Bob Balaban. Bob Balaban. Did you know who Arthur C? This is obviously this is going to seem obvious once I say it. Did you know who Arthur C. Clarke wanted to play Chandra?
Ben Kingsley.
Yes. I knew you would guess it even if you didn't know it, because he had just played Gandhi.
Yeah.
And I think won an Oscar, or he was definitely nominated as well.
Oh, he won an Oscar.
Yeah.
He won an Oscar.
So Ben Kingsley was who Arthur Clarke wanted to play Chandra, which would have made more sense because he had already played an Indian person before.
Yeah, I'm just curious why they did not. I mean, I like Bob Balaban in this part. I've always liked him in, the roles he does. I loved especially the confrontation he has with the other two Americans when he's saying, no, this is what happened. The reason that he killed everyone is because you lied to him. His programming conflicted. That's why. And he treats Hal like it's a person. Even Sal, the computer in his office, which is obviously an upgrade from Hal because it's been years later. he talks to her. Can I ask you a question? Can I do this? It's very
He's very polite.
you know. But I like him. But I'm so curious because obviously Clark wanted it to be ethnic casting. He wanted, an Indian.
Well, and it
or
should have
Indian
been.
descent, and it should have been. And I don't know why they didn't.
Yeah, I mean, if you were looking at it from the modern day, like today, it wouldn't be Ben Kingsley either. It would be an Indian actor, like the guy from Eternals, or I mean, he's in everything now. He's in Obi-Wan too.
Oh, have to watch it. Yep.
Yeah.
But then again, Helen Mirren, although she has Russian descent, is not Russian.
She's not. She's British. And that other guy that we like that's with John Lithgow is an actual Russian actor.
Yeah, Ilya Baskin is Russian. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But
so they tried.
Dana Elcar is not Russian yet. He's playing Dmitri in the beginning.
I always think of him as a character actor. I never really think of him as a lead. But he is not. I mean, he's American, isn't he?
Yeah, Dana Elcar.
Yeah.
The only time I always remember him from The Sting. He was the cop in The Sting. So
I remember him from I want to say it's like Black Sheep Squadron or something where he's in the military.
Probably.
Like some television
he
show.
He was in Catch 22.
Okay. Well, there's that too.
Yeah. And lots of television, of course.
Mm-hmm. I guess really the only person other than Hal that reprises his role is Keir. How do you say that? Keir Dullea?
Keir Dullea.
Is Dave Bowman. He comes back and plays Dave again. They are the only two that reprise their roles. And I like how they do the whole, every time you see him, he's a different age.
Yes, to show that time means nothing to him. It's a way of doing the Interstellar without explaining it through a piece of paper and a pencil.
Right. Exactly. It sure is.
And Douglas Rain reprises his role.
Right. That's what I was going to say. He and Douglas Rain are the only two that are back, from the original 2001.
Mm-hmm.
We mentioned Dana Elcar. We mentioned the cameo by Arthur Clarke. Apparently I've got Gary Lockwood down, but it says it's archive footage. That's what it is. So it was like a flashback or something, I guess.
Yeah, they show the tape of them talking. Yeah.
Right. And then lastly, you mentioned Sal, the computer that Chandra talks to at the beginning, has a female voice. You know who that is, right?
I didn't research that. No, I don't.
No, it's Candace Bergen.
Oh, that makes sense. I could hear that. I could hear that now.
I've got Candace Bergen is the voice of Sal 9000 Computer. She was credited as Olga Malsnerd, a pseudonym combining the surname of her husband, Louis Mal, and Mortimer Schnerd, one of her father's stage personas.
Yeah, one of the puppets. That's cool.
Of Edgar Bergen. Yeah. So I thought that was kind of cool that Candace Bergen's in this movie and you don't even really realize it because they don't even bill her. They bill a pseudonym. So that's what I have for casting.
Well, I would just add to that also, and I don't even know her name or the actress name, but I always, as a young man, remembered the Russian girl that climbs into his bunker
and hugs him.
The arrow breaking, because A, I thought she was hot, but B, she barely is in this as far as she's seen a lot because she's in all the group shots, but she barely says anything or does anything, but she always imprinted on me for some reason.
Yeah, I think she's very memorable, and I did not even include her in my casting notes because I usually, copy and paste like the first 10 or so faces that stick out to me that I remember from the film.
Right.
And she must have come way down because she didn't have much dialogue.
Right.
We mentioned awards earlier. This was nominated for Academy Awards. It did not win any, but it was nominated for art direction. It was nominated for costume design. It was nominated for sound, which would explain the breathing of John Lithgow, and best visual effects, which at the time, like I said, some of it's really good, but some of it is dated now and looks weird to me.
Of course.
I actually have a note here that says the atmosphere of Jupiter and the swarm of monoliths are two examples of early CGI.
Yes.
It was also up for makeup. I forgot to mention that. Our friends at the Academy of Science Fiction, Fantasy, and Horror Films nominated it for Best Science Fiction Film, Best Costume, and Best Special Effects.
Mhm.
No wins. However, it did win an award. It won a Hugo Award in
Yes.
1985 for Best Dramatic Presentation.
Science fiction again. Yes.
And that went to Hyams and Clark. So,
Okay. Yep.
so those are the awards I had for it. It is not on the 1001 movies you must see before you die list.
See, I would put my stake in the ground and say that I would watch this movie before I'd watch Interstellar again. I love this movie. I like this movie a lot more than Interstellar. So that's just
I would put my my comment to that would be the reason this movie resonates is because of the cast. I think the cast is strong in this.
Very strong.
I mean, it's in particular Lithgow, Scheider, and Mirren.
Right.
And that Russian guy.
Ilya Baskin. Yeah, he's great too.
Sorry, I keep saying that because I don't know his name.
Well, they all have, Dmitry, Vladimir. I mean, they all have kind of cliche Russian names too. But I even like the other one, the dark-haired one, that is so bland in his delivery. He's always going, "We sent a probe down," and Scheider's like going, and he's going, "It showed nothing." Really, it showed. And Scheider is so specific and facially exaggerated, and he's just like, "Yes, we did not find anything." He's so straight. I like them too.
Another reason I don't know that guy's name is not because he's Russian. It's because I didn't put him in my cast list. He must have fallen far down on the list too. Baskovich, is that what you said?
Ilya Baskin, Elya. I always remember because I thought he had a cool name too. And
no, that's his name, not his character, right?
That's his name, yes, his actor name, because he had done Moscow on the Hudson, and he's like one of the best. He's got two great scenes with Robin Williams in Moscow on the Hudson. But we cannot do a 2010 look at without at least quoting the final lines, which were, "All these worlds are yours except Europa. Attempt no landing there. Use them together. Use them in peace," which is so Cold War, but also so science fiction, so Arthur C. Clarke. And it leads to that very last scene. Did you like the last scene that actually takes place on Europa?
Where it's just like showing nature and the ocean and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, I loved that. That was so. The key that it reminded me of, since we're getting ready to do keys, the one key that reminded me of was Wrath of Khan.
Yeah,
I mean, it
for sure
shows the very end, and you see the jungle and the tropics, and you see the torpedo there. This ends with the monolith standing there, and you hear the really eerie kind of distant animal call, and then it goes into also Spock Zarathustra again. I went, see, that makes it a sequel to me. That works.
Yeah, well, and it is very Wrath of Khan, like you said. As far as keys, because it's Genesis all over again. Yeah.
Well, and it's the that thought that they're showing that whatever this alien race is that created these is helping the evolution of planets. Kind of thing. So yeah.
Before we go on to keys, I was going to mention, and this is another reason why this movie is a victim of the time it was made. We've already mentioned that some of the effects look dated, and some of the casting is obviously dated because they're using people to play ethnic roles instead of casting them ethnically. Another thing in this movie is the friendship between Ilya, or Maxim, as he is known on the in the movie, and Walter.
Oh yeah,
which is not. It's played strictly as a friendship. He ends up dying after he helps John through that. I mean, not John, Walter through that spacewalk. And you see Walter wearing Maxim's baseball cap later on after he is gone because of that friendship that they had. Well, apparently in the book, and I have not read the book, Arthur C. Clarke said that was a homosexual relationship, or at least insinuated that was a gay relationship between the two, that's where the sparks really were.
Oh, could have been.
Not just friendship.
I mean, they don't play it that way in the movie, but it could have been. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And in 1984, you wouldn't have. It's another thing that I think kind of dates the movie, is that you would not see that.
Right. Well, of course not. No. Keys.
We are there. You want to? I mean, we've already obviously 2001.
2001 done.
2001 check.
I have Contact, of course, we mentioned already because they the first scene is shot at the Very Large Array, and originally they had wanted it to be Arecibo, but they couldn't because of certain filming issues that they had. I think budget and everything else. They couldn't get to Sao Paulo for Arecibo, so they filmed in at the Very Large Array, which is called the VLR, which is great. It's a great opening of it. We kind of skipped over the tech aspect of that first opening shot is actually sunset in reverse to show the sun rising, as we're hearing also Sparks Zarathustra. I have two keys from my second favorite science fiction series of all time, Babylon 5. The Leonov design inspired the Omega class destroyers from Babylon 5. So all the Earth destroyers, when they're shown, are based on, and they actually looks very similar to the model. The big blocky section that then rotates, that's the cruise quarter for centrifugal force, but then you have a big blocky beginning and the thrusters in the back, all of that. That's all Babylon 5 as well. And there's a blue spacesuit in it when they show the pod bay. There's a blue spacesuit in the back. That exact prop, that exact suit was used in 2 episodes of Babylon 5, Babylon Squared and War Without End. So
okay. Well, so Babylon 5 likes this movie, or whoever.
Well,
Straczynski.
Yeah, Straczynski is probably likes this movie. Yeah.
Okay.
That's 2 of mine.
Okay. Well, I have one that is more of a. I'm not sure how this would fall as far as keys, as far as I guess creative as well, is Aliens. It's the differences between the first and second movie. The first movie of 2001 is, even though it's enormous art-wise, it's a very small movie with a smaller cast and a lot less dialogue. This movie is bigger. It involves 2 countries and a larger cast and a lot more dialogue. Very similar to Alien.
Yep.
You know, small movie, small cast, big movie. You know,
and more action oriented, the countdown and we have to get there and everything,
right?
All of that. So, I also have Alien in that the if you look at the displays, especially when they're on the Leonov, all the displays are very similar to the graphic displays in Alien. The way they do the little cursor thing and the moving and the trajectories look very similar to design.
They're right on top of us, man.
Her in charge. I have a unique one. Craig Huxley. You may have seen him in your notes or research. He did all the electronic music for this. So he didn't do the score, but he did all the electronic sound effects. And like when it first smash cuts to the Leonov and you hear that kind of stuff. Craig Huxley was actually the young actor kid in Operation Annihilate.
I did read that.
Children Shall Lead.
I did read that, and we mentioned it, I think, when we did our Star Trek episode, because we've already covered that one. And I knew that kid actor that did sound effects, but I couldn't remember. Okay, yeah, it all makes sense now.
And I've got another Star Trek, which is the VOs. The VOs in this remind me a lot of the Captain's Logs. The way they tell the story through these voiceover journal entries almost, that either Heywood is making or the African-American gentleman is making back to them about status on Earth, everything else. They feel like Captain's Logs.
Yeah. Yeah, I love the conversations between Scheider and that black guy on the park bench and Scheider and Elcar. Both those conversations are really well written and they flow very naturally and they convey a lot of information without it being burdensome to me.
They're great exposition dumps without feeling like a dump.
Exactly.
Definitely. I agree with you.
I have this one I caught from IMDb, and you had mentioned that Clark does a cameo on the bench, But did you know that in the old folks' home, there's a Time magazine cover about the impending war between the U.S. and the Soviet and who represents both?
Yeah, it's in the hospital for Bowman's mother, right? And
Mm-hmm.
it's trying to remember. Oh, it's Kubrick and Clark,
It's
right?
Kubrick and Clark.
Yeah,
Kubrick's like the Russian and Clark's the
yeah,
American.
which makes perfect sense because Kubrick looks like a Russian.
I just thought that was really funny when I read it. I was like,
Kubrick looks like Lenin, so it
yeah.
works. Yeah, no.
Well, yeah, because he's always had that crazy hair and crazy beard.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And then I don't really have a lot else. I put Outland because of the special effects. I have not seen that movie in forever, but also because of the director. Obviously, it's Peter Hyams.
We need to see that one. We need to watch that one. I have a couple more. I have another Alien one, and it's actually in some of the pictures you've shown. If you look at the production design, so the design of the Leonov control room, their panels, the design of the spaceship, the space suits and the pod, the launch pod where they are, the section where they are in when they put their spacesuits on and then go out onto the spacewalks, and like the probe that comes down with all the panels that unfurl and all that kind of stuff. All that looks like it's in the same universe as Alien.
It does. And some of the lighting does too, like when it goes all amber looking.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought that too.
So much of Alien. So definitely influence there. I've got Interstellar because again, just like it's a 2001 through this movie through Interstellar, which is when you're in space, you don't hear sound. So when you have things that clang into each other, you don't hear them. When you attach a rope, you don't hear that click kind of thing because it's in space. The issue is they establish it in this movie and then they screw it up. So they start doing it all through, and then suddenly we get into all this stuff near the end, and you're hearing the engines fire, and you're hearing his chain hoist go when he's being pulled into the ship. And
it's just like Gravity. They screwed that up too.
Yeah, why would you screw this up? You established it.
Yeah, I mean, they screwed up the gravity with the pencil, and now they screw up the sound. Well,
I've got kind of a weird linking key, which is Steven Spielberg, because he's worked with Scheider on Jaws. He's worked with Balaban on Close Encounters, and he worked with Kubrick on AI, which helped inspire this. So, there you go. And then my last one is Michael Westmore. You said he won or at least nominated for makeup effects for this. That's Michael Westmore that does Face Off.
Okay. Yeah, I've got his name under makeup for Oscar nominated. Yeah,
he's phenomenal. He does that series Face Off on Sci-Fi that I love, and he's also just done a lot of. He was essentially took over for Westmoreland. Westmoreland was the guy who designed original series Trek effects, so like Spock's ears and things like that. Michael Westmore did all of like Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, all the Paramount and Star Trek series.
When you say Westworld, are you talking the original or the new one?
Westmoreland was the name.
You didn't say Westworld. I just heard that. Okay, never mind.
Yeah, Westmoreland is the name of the
I put down Face Off
makeup artist.
Yeah. Okay.
Westmore, no land in it. Westmore, Michael Westmore is the this effect artist. Yep. I think that's all cool. I got on mine.
That's really all. I'm glad you mentioned Interstellar, because that was one that we should have included, especially since we just did that 3 episodes back.
Yeah.
And that's definitely I have nothing else. Is that gonna do?
I think that's it. We have finished our look at 2010.
Yeah, I mean, I would recommend this movie, especially if you're a fan of either Arthur C. Clarke or the original film. It's definitely a must see, even if you like the first one more. Like, well, for instance, when you mentioned Wynn's a friend of ours, for those of you out there that don't know us. And he's notorious for really not liking anything. I mean, he has a few favorites, he sticks to them, everything else has got problems. And anyway, I mean, even if you're somebody that holds 2001 in such high regards as he does, you still need to see this movie. So
Yeah, and I mean, I come off a lot of times as like Mr. Negative all the time about, oh, they should have, or why didn't they, or blah blah blah. But I was glad to do a movie that I occasionally go, yeah, I liked it. I liked it.
right. And even though they may screw up with sound or gravity,
Yeah,
it's like me, what horror movie doesn't have illogical things in it, I mean, there's not many out there and I still like them. So there's, I don't let little things like that bog me down all the time.
so true.
I let art flow over me.
Let art flow over you.
Well, we would like to thank everyone out there for
Yes.
joining us this week for our little dive back into outer space. If you are here for the first time and watching us on YouTube, we would like you to hit that little subscribe button down there. It does us a world of good and cost you absolutely nothing. If you listen to us out in the airwaves, well, we appreciate you as well. Tell your friends about us, rate us, and review us if you have time. If you're looking for any additional supplemental material that we may have out there, we do have a Patreon channel. There is some free stuff on there. There is also some bonus stuff on there. And there is also some exclusive new shows on there. They're not real new, but we're in the second seasons of both. One is, actually, no, we're in the first season. We do the second season of X-Files. So I guess not. But we're in the second season of the Dilithium Chamber, which is a Star Trek show, as well as our X-Files Declassified show over on Patreon. Please join us. And until next week, I'll be seeing you, David.
See you, Tim.
All right. Take care. Bye.
Join us.
You can't start the car. Johnny has the keys.